Go, great. Okay, we've begun. So, said it a couple of times. I'm going to say it again.
Sure.
If you're joining us on this webinar, there are a couple of things to know. Firstly, please switch off the Twitter and the Facebook and the Gmail and all that stuff so that you can give Seb your undivided attention. Obviously, that's a request. It's not a demand. But yeah, and scroll underneath, you'll find a question area and also an offer tab. We're going to not really mention the offer too much, but there is an offer that you can redeem, and I've spelled it out in plain English. So yeah. So here is Sebastian Webb. Hi, Seb.
Thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, that's great. We've got plenty of us going on. Do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, so I'm Sebastian. I'm the author of MicroThemer, and that's a plugin for WordPress, which I'm going to take you on a walkthrough of today.
Great.
And shall I just switch straight to the screen now?
Yeah, I can do that if you want. I'll put your screen on, and if you want to make your tab, your MicroThemer tab, we're all ears. I'm going to switch my microphone off, and yeah, go for it, Seb. Thanks for coming.
Okay, thanks. So I'm just resetting the interface now to how it looks when you first install it. So basically, MicroThemer is a CSS customization tool. So you use it to change the appearance of kind of anything on your site. It's like point and click. So to start with, I'll just show kind of the real basics of the interface and the workflow. So you start, it's like designing is always a two-step process. You start by choosing something to customize, and then you'll have some toolbars, design options to apply whatever styles you want. So you start by clicking Target, and if you hover over any of the elements on the page, they get highlighted. Essentially, all web page elements are just square blocks, as you can see here. I'm going to start just with this site title here. So you click it to select it. You can optionally give it, MicroThemer will come up with a name for it, which sometimes you want to customize. I'll just leave that for now. And you click the Create Selector button. Once you've done that, we've got all of these options here for applying styles, like font styles, backgrounds, padding, all of that kind of stuff. So I can just start by maybe setting the color of the title. Hang on, which one am I on? Ooh. Why isn't that working? I'm having a technical problem immediately. One second. Let me just create a selector, and I'll set a background color just to make sure everything's okay. Oh yeah, it's working. Okay. All right, so for instance, here I've targeted the header element and I've given it a pink color. We've got this color picker here. We can do anything we want. So I will just go to the sphere. Why isn't it working on that color? I don't know. I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to come back to it. Let's just refresh the page.
Oh, the joys of doing things.
Oh dear, yeah.
Work with
this is basically my worst nightmare.
Yeah, it's all right. We've all been there.
Become real. So I'm just going to test that. Yes, it is working fine. Right. So what I've got is a design. So this is what I'm working with here is the default Generate Press theme. And I've just added some content, but I haven't actually customized the styling of it yet. And what I've got is Monica to create this design here. And so I'm going to show you how to convert the design, the default design of Generate Press into this design here. Okay. So we've kind of got a shared point of reference on what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to start with the description, because for some reason I was having a technical issue with the site title. And we can see what I'm using here is something called Zeppelin, which is basically a tool which reads kind of graphic design files and shows you down here like the CSS that's been used to generate it. So it tells me that, for instance, that the font family is Roboto, that it's font size 12 pixels here, etc. So I am just now going to apply first I'll do the Roboto font. Roboto is a Google font. So we start by choosing Google font here. And then I can browse the library of Google fonts here with this pop-up. So I'll say Roboto. And that searching here filters the list down. And I'm just going to see which weighting it was. So it's 300. So if I go back to the sites, I can choose that here. It's a good idea to pick the Google font in the weight that you actually want to apply because the letters look sharper. So if I click use this font, it's changed the font to Roboto here. And if I now set the font size to 12 pixels, and it was 300, I believe, was the font weight, so it matches. And I can give it maybe a top margin of 20 pixels, let's say. And I'll also center align it. So you get text align center here. And there we go. So now for the troublesome menu title here, which I've already created a selector for it. I'm just going to use the MicroThemer's got various tools for figuring out when things aren't going well and you're confused by your styles not working, which happens even when you're doing webinars live. It's got these options here where you can figure out, okay, well, why isn't my style working? That's why. Okay, so I'll just explain these panes then. So the pane on the left is the HTML pane, and what that does is it shows you, if I hover over the various elements on the page, it will show you the corresponding HTML. Now, HTML, if you're a non-coder, can be quite intimidating. So I'll just say like a few things about it to kind of help you get to grips with it just initially. The first thing is the text you see on the actual page, you'll sometimes see that in the HTML code itself. So that kind of helps orientate you. Okay, this is, if I click on this line here, then this is the site title because, sorry, the site description in this case, because it's, I recognize this interior inspiration from around the world text. It's the structure of a page is basically HTML elements inside HTML elements, kind of like a Russian doll. And the indentation in this pane here kind of shows you. So this is a header. This is a top header element here, slightly indented to the right. We know that this is a child element, and slightly indented to the right again. This is a child element. And I'll talk a bit more about that when it becomes relevant to the things that, like the style changes that we want to make from copying that site. So this pane on the right, which showed me why my style wasn't working, it shows the default styles that the theme is applying already. It's very similar if we've got coders watching. If you right-click, inspect with Chrome, you have the same sort of thing. We have a HTML pane here and a styles pane on the right. I'm just going to close MicroThemer. So if I was to right-click this, we've got similar kind of information, site title A. This was the style that I set. I set this red color here, and it's being the crosses show you that this is being overridden, which is why it wasn't working, because it's got this selector here, which the default theme is applying. So it should, if I copy this to prove a point and replace it here, save selector, yeah, it's gone red. Now, the reason it overrid it, even though I tried in my desperation to click this thing to make it important, is because we've got this visited pseudo element, which means style any links that have been visited in this color, and that state overrides the kind of the link selector that I had here, which was just this. That's just a gotcha, something to watch out for. It got me, even though I'm experienced with web design. So without further ado, I'll now style this to match the Monica's design. So let's have a look here. We've got 32 pixels, Playfair this time in bold. So I can set that here. Because when I did a dry run of this, I hadn't obviously clicked on this link, and so it didn't have the status of visited. So I wasn't prepared for that at all. So let's see, 32. And it was Playfair, wasn't it? So if we, once you've applied, once you've browsed for a Google font here, you can just click, it'll appear in the recent suggested items. This is actually a new feature. I've forgotten which one was it, Playfair Display in Bold. This is a new feature which, in order to actually, whereby MicroThemer remembers the styles that you've added, and even suggests them, you can clear the suggestions, by the way, either individually or all at once, or load them back. In order to get this functionality, because it's experimental, but it's about to be released, go to Preferences and then set Edge Mode to Yes. So you can do that now with the latest version of MicroThemer. Okay, so we've got the, I'm just going to take this and put this to black, because that's actually the color used in the design. So now we just need to center it. So this, actually I'll show you, when you're working on a selector, you do Control-Alt-H. You don't have to use that keyboard shortcut, actually. You can just hover your mouse over this or over here, but it's a good one to learn. Control-Alt-H will always highlight the selector. It will highlight the elements that the selector targets, like that. So this shows me that this link element is only as big as the text contains. So if I was to center this, it wouldn't actually do anything on the page visible. So what I want to do, that's because this is called an inline element, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. But for now, I'll just target this element here. So this is the parent of the link element. The link element, going back to this HTML perspective, the link element is just slightly indented below the parent element. And if you don't want to click on HTML, you can also alternatively use these breadcrumbs here, and it's like kind of moving up from the Russian doll layers up to the top. So here I've got the element which wraps around this individual link element, and if I add text line to this, I'll create a selector for it, and I add text align, then it will center the content inside because it filled the full kind of width of this area here. So now we've got the header bits, the text, I think, aligned correctly. Let's just check back on this. So next I'll just turn off Chrome. So now I will set, now the color in the design is it's really similar to the default color that's been used here by Generate Press, but I will nonetheless make it exactly the same. When you're setting a background color for the whole, that you want to affect the whole page, rather than because one thing I could do is target this header element, which is white. I don't know if this shows in the video, but this is white and this is gray. And I could create a selector which changes the color here. But it's kind of better to find the topmost element, in this case the body element, where the color's been set, so it bleeds through the whole page. You only set it in one place. So I'll do that now. I'll click on the body element. This pane here will probably show us that, there's a background color set. The difference between this tab and this tab is that this shows the computed styles, and they're sometimes subtly different. So in this case, with the background color, it's kind of the same. It just says the same RGB color. But for instance, if it was to tell me the width of, say I'd explicitly set the width of this site description, and I'd set that as like a percentage, 50%, the computed styles will always tell me in pixels. And sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's not, and that's why it's good to have both of these tabs to get a clear perspective. So anyway, I'm going to create my selector for the body tab. Now, this targeting pane on the right, this gives all of the possible ways that MicroThemer has found to target the element, this element I've clicked on, this body element. And the default suggestion is often something you'll want if, for instance, you just want to target a single element. Like this menu has 3 items, and if I only wanted to target a single element, the default selector would be single, and I could create that. But often, with these menu items, I would want to create a single selector that targets all of them, so that my styles apply to all of them in one go, rather than laboriously repeating myself. The default option here, which is we do want just the body tag, but MicroThemer's found is one of the classes that's in the the body tag here. It's got loads of classes, and it's just found one of them and suggested them, and it's got a number in, which normally means it's specific to the current page that you're looking at. And I actually want to change the color on the whole site, so this is setting global styles here. So I would scroll down and choose just the body tag. Even if you don't know what this stuff means, you can sort of use that as a rule of thumb, but the further down you go, the more broad and widely applying the selector. So I'll create this now, and I will set the background color to, and by the way, this little thing here tells me the existing color that's applied to it. So it's picking up this gray area here. So if I now set this, so the color picker has an option, by the way, where you can sample the existing site colors, because often when you're designing and you're not following like a specific graphic design file like I am here, you want to design in a way that's congruent with the way the theme looks currently. So being able to click this will resample the colors affecting the current page. It won't do a huge amount now. Oh yeah. But if I was, say, on the contact page, I had loads of new colors, I could click this again, and it would pick them up, and then I can save them here like I've done. So I'm just going to see what color has been used here. That's this gray. And it's almost identical, so like I say, you won't see a huge amount. I can copy and paste that in here, by the way. It's just slightly yellower. And now for the header element, which is white, I'm going to create a selector for that. Let's see, and I'm going to use this pane here to make sure I'm targeting the right element that has the color value. Because if like an inside element had the color value, then setting it on a parent element wouldn't actually do anything visibly, but I've got the right element here. In fact, and here's another thing. So it's suggesting this 2 here in the name, meaning that's a hint that I've actually already created a selector for this header element. And this 1 confirms that. And if I want to, rather than creating a new selector to target the same thing, you should look out for these 1s, because it means, okay, now I've already created a selector. If I just set all the styles on that one selector, it's a lot easier to manage. So what I want to do is just set this color to transparent. So I'll bring this right down to 0% opacity, which means any color that was set on the body tag, like I did just then, now bleeds through. So that's kind of the top bit done. The menu I might leave to a bit later, because I like to kind of increase the complexity of the examples that I'm doing gradually. And the menus are notoriously difficult to style, especially if you're having a bit of bad luck, like I am today.
Seb, can I just pause you a second and just ask,
yeah, of course.
If anybody's got any questions at this point? I see Michael's asked one, but it's not relevant to what you're doing at the moment, so I'll leave that one till the end. So if anybody's got any questions about what they've seen, start putting them into the section underneath the webinar. If you want to, if you wanted to go over something again or explain how a particular thing works, go for it. Otherwise, back to you, Seb.
Yeah, so and that goes for every little section. So I would consider this header area a section that's been done. Next, I think I might move on to in the design that I'm copying. There's no sidebar. It's just been moved down beneath the main content. And that's quite common these days, because people are so good at ignoring sidebars. It's kind of common just to have like a one long row of content if you want people to engage with it. So I'm just going to show you how that's done now in MicroThemer. And what I'll also do is I'll hoist up this main content bit so it overlaps nicely with the image. So let's go back to here. Right, okay. So first of all, I'll just create a selector for the sidebar. Now, this is where it's quite useful to understand a little bit about the kind of the Russian doll structure of HTML, like I was talking about earlier, and be a bit familiar with these this HTML pane, because what I did there, when you hover over certain elements, you can't target everything, because sometimes an element is sat in exactly the same space as another element, and so when you hover your mouse over and click, it'll always select the one that's in front, like the child element, in other words. So sometimes you just want to go, this is where this directional controls are very similar to using the breadcrumbs, only it's sometimes a bit easier when you just want to go up, because you can keep your mouse in the same place. So if I click up a few times, then I've now got kind of the outermost element which contains the sidebar, and that's always going to be the one, as you can see from this styles pane, which sets like the layout, like the width here of 25%. It's also set float left. When you float elements, that are next to each other, they just stack side by side. So you've got the content here, which is a floated element, and you've got the sidebar here, which is a floated element, and they stack side by side. So all I need to do to move it down is to just unset this float property. So the selector I've got, the right sidebar is the automatic name, that seems fine. So I'll just click create selector. And then float is in the position property group. Now it's over here, so I'll set float to none, and then that pops down. Okay.
Nice.
And then we can also make I'll create another selector now for this. Again, I'm going to use the up arrow, because there's often, like, the main content area has like quite a few they're called nested HTML elements, when there's an element inside an element inside an element, and you're not sure which one is actually the outermost one. But if I keep going up, I can see now in my styles pane that it says width 75%, so that's the element that controls the structure. So I will create a selector for this. Primary, I think, is a bit ambiguous, the default label, so I'm just going to call it maybe main content, and create a selector for that. In a minute, I'll talk about the organization of selectors in these folders, but I'll come back to that in a minute. If I set, so this has currently got a float, it's got float left as well, so I can just set that to none. And doing so has created this space here. I'll explain maybe why that happens later. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but the width, so it was 75%, so if I say width 100%, it's now filled the area. As you can see, there's this tiny little gap to above and to the right, and these tiny little gaps are really annoying when you're trying to design something. And so luckily, MicroThemer's highlighting often shows which element adds the spacing that you might be trying to get rid of. So if I go up a few times, what yellow means is, yellow stands for margin, and purple is padding, by the way, but this means, okay, there's a little bit of margin around the main content area. Let's create a selector for this. We called the other one main content, so let's maybe call this main inner. And I'll create a selector there. And actually, as we're dealing with margins, this is the perfect time to implement this we've got a bit of margin here on either side, and we're going to use a negative margin to hoist up this white area over the top of the image. So go back. Let's go to the margin. So you can see the computer values are 20 pixels by default. So I'll set, I think it said 64. I'll do the left and right one first. I think it was 64. Oops, the 6 on my number pad doesn't work. So I have to use it above the letters. So that's moved it in line correctly here. We had a 20 pixel margin here, and because we wanted to move it up by 64, we'll add that together to meet 84. But with margins, you can't set negative padding, by the way, but you can set negative margins, and it's basically a way of moving things in the opposite direction to where you would normally set like margin to move things down. So the first thing you notice here is that the white has gone behind the image with the actual text. So the text is in front of the image, the white is behind it. And that's because that's something to do with Z-index. Z-index is in CSS is where it's a bit like layers in Photoshop, where some elements can appear above or in front of or behind other elements, and it only happens when elements have a position value that isn't static. So if I was to, so any of the others, so we've got relative, fixed, absolute. So if I give, so if I give, for instance, this a relative value, the reason it appears in front is because it's now participating in the Z-index stacking. And by default, any element that comes after another element will appear on top. And because this, in terms of the order of the HTML, because this comes second, it now appears on top. So that's that problem solved. Now, I could spend some time kind of styling the text here, and we could do that if we've got a bit of time left over, but because I've already kind of applied some fonts and whatnot to the title and the description, I think it might be better to move on to styling this, where I'm going to show, I'll take some questions before I do this though, where I show like how to use Flexbox and also how to design responsively, so to make sure our posts look nice at various screen sizes, which at the moment they don't look nice on any screen sizes. But we'll address that soon. Was there any questions? Are the questions working, by the way?
Yeah, the questions appear to be working, but we don't necessarily have any about what you've done. So you feel free to just crack on.
I've just noticed I can't go to the webinar. I can't view the webinar, can I? Because it does that screen.
Yeah, you'd probably need to put that on a separate monitor. Okay. Otherwise, yeah, we're just going to get the feedback.
Yeah, sure. Feedback loop. Okay. All right. Well, how am I doing for time, by the way? You're
fine. We're on, roughly speaking, about 25 minutes.
25 minutes. Okay. All right. I think it's good maybe to focus on. I tell you what, I'll add a transition effect to this title tag. Then I'll move on to styling this, and we'll see how much time we've got. Okay. So if I target, oh no, I've already. Oh yeah, actually, so this targeting system is also quite good, like I showed you before, just for relocating selectors. The alternative way is just actually looking in the selector menu where they all appear. But often it's easier just to do it visually, like I'm going to do here. So I'm going to target the main title element, and what I'm going to do is I'm create a transition effect where you, when the page loads, the title comes down from a little bit around here and just slides down into this spot. So I'm going to use set the position, the relative, and I'm going to say top. I'm going to say minus maybe 30 pixels, and that'll move it here. So that's the kind of the default location. And then I go to the transition field and I say I want to transition the top value, position top value, and I want to set, and the event for this to happen, I'm going to say is in view, and I can set the event value to 0. And what that means is when it comes in view, so like that, then set this value, the value of top, to 0. So that's as simple as that, actually.
Nice. So when you load the page, that will just sort of gently scroll down.
What you might want to do is say, because it kind of seems a bit unnecessary that every time you scroll for it to do it, you can say in view once.
Yep.
And then it'll only do it once. So if I reload the page, go, then it's done. And then
that's nice, subtle, but cool.
But then when I scroll back, it's kind of it doesn't keep doing it because it's kind of maybe a distraction at that point. Okay, so now I'll show you how to use Flexbox for styling these posts here. So well, I already have a selector, I believe, for the this one here for the right sidebar. So I'll navigate to that, and let's see how big was it? Total is 724 pixels. So I will set the width to that. I'm going to set the width to auto first. And then I'll set the max width to 724. That means it can get smaller. So on smaller screens, it will shrink. It won't be rigid at 724 pixels. I'll eliminate some of this padding. Yeah, I've got it first time. That's a bit of this label is not ideal. Let's just call it widget. Create selector. And I'll set padding to. So if you want to set padding, all of the padding, there's 40 pixels on all of these padding top, right, etc. You'll set them all in one go. You can choose this link option here and then set that to 0, and they'll all update instantly. And also in Mongo's design, it's centered in between the content here. And to center block level elements, if I was to set text align, it would just centrally align anything inside it. So the trick for centrally aligning block level elements like this is to set margin left and right, both of them, to auto. Oh, did that work? Here we go, no problem. Let's have a look. Let's see why it's doing that. Oh, I think I know why, actually. Sorry, it's because I've set it on the, I'll just clear. It's because I actually, I targeted, when I was removing the padding, that was a different selector to the one that actually I set the width on of 724, the max width of 724 pixels. So if I go up to find that, it's this one here, yeah. So we go to there, and I'll set, yeah, margin left auto and margin right auto. So that's a way of right aligning, by the way. If you were only to set the margin left to auto, then it would shift fully to the right. But if you set them both to auto, it centrally aligns. Okay, so the images are huge at the moment, so let's do something about that. I'll create a selector for the image. So here I'm targeting just a single image, but I want actually, if I hover over my mouse over here, it says targets formats on the page. So if I choose this option, then I've got all of them targeted. And this selector here, 584 by 253, MicroThemer has obviously found a class based on the size of the picture, but to make this kind of a bit more flexible, I might choose a selector that is kind of a bit more general WP post image in case I change the size of it. So I'm just going to call this recent posts image and create that selector too. So I can set the width of the element to, what was it in the design? 284. So I set the width to 284. It will shrink down. So one thing I'm going to point out though is that when we're because we're just designing with responsive in mind here, is that setting, whenever you set a width is a fixed pixel value, you have to question whether that's a good idea, because ideally when the screen, as the screen shrinks, we'd like the image to shrink too, proportionally, so that we've still got room for this text title here. So we could just set this as a 33%. And then it's kind of an approximation. But if the exact kind of pixel values for desktop are quite important, like if you're very accurately following this design here, there's a little unknown trick in MicroThemer where you can get it to calculate it for yourself. So basically what I want to do is I want to calculate 284 as a percentage of the parent container, because that's what CSS does when you enter a percentage value. So if you type equals percent 284, MicroThemer will automatically convert that to 39.22%, which does come in quite handy when you're designing responsively sometimes. This is now the right size. We could do something similar now for the title element. Actually, to begin with, because in Monica's design, she's got the image to the left, and we've got the the text aligned that's floating to the right of it, and it's also centrally aligned inside the box. And centrally aligned stuff inside boxes is actually a lot harder than you would expect with CSS.
Yep.
So, but Flexbox, fortunately, is a way, makes it a lot easier. So I'm going to show you how to turn both of these elements into Flexbox items. So if I click on either one of them, I can see that there's a link element, which is the parent of both of them. And the way Flexbox works is whatever, if you set display flex on a parent element, the items inside it, the immediate children, will be kind of flexible items, if you like. So the selector for this, again, I want one that will target the link on all 4 of these boxes, and that seems all right in terms of the selector, but I'm going to call this, because I know what I'm going to call this, the flex container. Great. So now you just go to the flex fields and set display flex. Yeah, that should do it. Okay, so now I'll need to set the image height to auto. Well, by default, flex items stretch to fill the height of the container. So if, and the same is true for this. So if I go to my selector, which targeted the images, and I'll set the height to auto, maybe. And no, well, that's not done. So here I'm going to just use the tools to find out what's going on.
That's okay. Take your time.
Height auto.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
In fact, we've all been there for days and days.
Yeah.
And days.
So we've got width 39%.
Months, Patrick.
Hang on. No, that doesn't work. So what important does, by the way, is it forces, if a theme's setting a height on something, then saying auto will force the style rule you're applying in MicroThemer to override it. In general, it's better practice to, if you've noticed that the theme's overriding your theme, to just use a slightly more specific selector, which is basically, so let's have a look, height auto, max width 35%. Oh, I know.
I was going to say, I wonder which one of us will spot it first. You.
No, I know what it is. I think it's because, whoops, what just happened there? Oh, I just went to the image attachment. Okay. I think it's because I've set, it's the flex property actually. So if I go to flex container and I set flex, and we'll say align items center. Yeah, there we go. It was just the default value of stretch here. So by the way, MicroThemer's Flexbox fields, the icons are actually quite indicative of which way you're going to align it, because I often forget whether justify content and align items, which way, what effect that will have. Because if you click column, if the flex direction was column, so the image appears above, like the items appear one above the other, then notice how these things change. If I put it back to row, they'll switch, because actually, see how they turn around like that?
Yep.
They mean different things depending on the direction of the flex, and that's quite a confusing thing in CSS, I think, in Flexbox. So okay, so I've managed to get the image to be the right size. The text is also aligned correctly with it. So now it's just a case of separating these items out into the various boxes that we can see. So let's have a look. I'm going to, so what I want to do is remove this white area, because I think that's what's blurring them all. So I'm going to have a look. I've got my background color open in the computer style. So if I move up the various elements in the DOM tree, there we go. It now says this is white. So, and I've already created a select for it, recent post widget. So I can go to that and set the background color to transparent. And that's gone.
Nice.
So now I can set the actual the white color on this, and maybe add some box shadow.
Yep.
And then we can possibly call it at that point, or we'll see.
Can I just see your design again, because I've forgotten what we're aiming
Yeah,
at?
I see. Yeah, of course. So that's how it looks. Yeah. So we do want the white, and we just want
Okay,
it
right. No padding around the
wrap
image. Yeah,
around.
yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
So let's have a look. So we've got the. I was going to find the padding and margin. Whoops. There we go. So which one has? I've already created a element for that. Oh, here we go. So that shows us we've got a bit of padding and some margin here.
Yep.
So let's create a selector for this one. And we want the one with 4, because we want our styles to apply to everything. And I'm just, to be lazy, I'm just going to have the rubbish title. So let's give this a background color of white. Got the saved colors here. And let's we have that tiny little bit of padding at the bottom, so we can set that to 0. And now it looks like so this is because of the image has got some margin, so we can clear that as well. So if I go to a recent post image selector that we created, and I'll link up this margin property and set it to 0. There we go.
Nice.
So now all that remains is setting the moving this in a little bit, giving it a bit of padding. So if we go back to the design, what have we got? We've got is that 32? Yeah, so we've got about 32 on each side. So whoops. Now, did I create a selector for this? It doesn't look like I have yet. So because it's still green, so that'll do. Post title, create selector.
Oh, so the little green cross is indicative that you need to create a selector. There isn't one.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It means you can do that. Yeah. So it's always good to have a look at that, and because then you can see it's easy to jump to one you've previously created. So I'm going to have to just see what the font size is for this. It's 20 pixels bold, and it's Playfair. And we also need. I'm going to do that now before I forget, and I'll add the padding. So Google font. Playfair 700 is equivalent of bold, by the way, and we'll make it bold, and we'll set the color to on these dark colors, and we'll set the margin, the padding, sorry, to the left and right one to, was it 32?
32, I think you said, yeah.
Yeah. So there we go. Now it's in the middle, and actually, I don't think I set the font size correctly, so it's a little bit smaller. So these are the kind of the default font size suggestions. If you enter your own value, it will appear in the list now for later. So it always appears kind of in order. So I think that's, and so actually no, the final thing then would be to create the, so this one, yeah. I'm going to add a bit of box shadow because I think, yeah, this has got some subtle box shadow.
So yeah, a little tiny bit, yeah.
It generally is with box shadow. It generally is good to which ones are those? The shadows here to have quite small. So I normally start by adding like an even blur, maybe 4, and I'll make it a bit darker. So the default is just this grey color if you don't specify any explicit color. So what I like to do is add a kind of a darker color, but then bring down the opacity. Because what that does is it blends it more with whatever background color. If it's a solid shadow color, then sometimes, and it goes over 2 different kind of background colors, and it looks odd. So we've got that as 4. At the moment, this is even around all of the edges, but if I want to slightly offset it, I could say by 1 pixel maybe. So now it's like slightly more exaggerated on these sides here.
Yep.
And I think that's probably enough, actually. It's yeah, so let's see. So if we pull this down, we might need to make a change. Oh yeah, so no, that's fine. So now, because we set the image as a percentage, you see how it sort of shrinks and grows with the browser. Yeah,
it looks good. You sound vaguely surprised.
Yeah, wow, that's a shaky start. It's working. I'm happy. Yeah, so but we still might want to make some changes. So for instance. This seems to be the mark where we start to like you notice that you can't see the shadow at this sort of stage
Yeah.
here. So maybe, and so with the default tabs MicroThemer comes with, they're completely customizable. It just so happens this one here is flukily in the right place where we want to apply some new styles for this screen size. If you wanted to customize it, you can click on that thing here and then just enter whatever media query code you want, if you know a bit of media query code.
Can you make more? Or have you just got a choice of 4?
No, you can add as many as you like.
Okay.
Here.
Oh yeah, I see. Yeah.
So I might like to set. Let's see. I can give. Maybe we'll go to the selector. Which one was it? The container element or this one? Actually, no. Maybe we'll go to the one that was actually the whole right sidebar. That was it, I think. We've got some right sidebar. So at this screen size, we can say, okay, we want some margin. We want to ensure that it stays. Because by the way, you notice how, so here it's 41, here it's 30. That just means it's got margin auto. Because remember we set margin left and right auto, and that means, so this computed value, that's again where like computed values can be a bit misleading. No one's explicitly set 40 pixels or 23 at this point. So I'm going to set, but I am now, because on this, for this tab, I want it to be, I don't know, maybe 12 pixels. Things are going to be a bit tighter on mobile. 12 pixels there. And now when we pull it in, yes, you see the shadow kind of stays. You can still see it. And we might also want to set something similar on the, this selector here. To reduce the amount of margin beneath the two, so it matches, it all looks even. So if I set that to 12, we've now got it looking quite nice. That's kind of looking responsive. And what we could do now, so it starts to get a bit cramped again when we're at this stage. So the phone tab is and by the way, you can see, if you forget, you can hover over. First, you hover over here to get the dots, and then you hover over that for it to tell you what the. I've set this to 550 because when I was messing around, normally it's 480, but when I was messing around, I was like, oh, 480 isn't. It's already looking a bit cramped, so I adjusted that. Just using this system here, like I showed you. I set this to 550. So here we might want to just find our flexbox selector again, and set, instead of row, maybe set it to column. Now we've got the image appearing above and the text below, but the image is too small. We now no longer need that 39% value that we set. So if we go to the image again, we can set and remember we set this here 39%. So if we go back to the phone tab, we can set the width to auto. And then it's boom, that's bigger. And we maybe want to set, let's go find our selector here again. Post title thing, we want to maybe give this, doesn't need so much left and right padding anymore. So let's maybe set all of the padding to perhaps 8 pixels. And
that looks nice.
We could shrink the text as well a bit, because we also maybe want it to look kind of right on even smaller mobiles. So let's maybe set that to, I don't know, 18 or something. So and that's designing responsively, basically.
That's cool.
I think, I mean, how long have we been going for now? I don't want to.
Well, we've been going for nearly 50 minutes. I mean, I think certainly towards the end, I was getting a real impression of. I was kind of starting to learn a little bit about the UI, which is obviously if you're looking at this for the first time, there's a lot of options there.
There is a huge amount.
Do you want to just quickly roll over some of the major UI elements? Not necessarily, give us a demo of what they actually do in reality,
just talk about
what's there, and that might be quite nice.
Okay.
I mean, give us an overview.
I said earlier that we've got folders, and these are quite useful for keeping, because if you come right now, I'm just kind of designing quickly, and I don't want to break the flow of what I'm doing, and so I might not be too careful about organizing where they are. But when you come back to this, that will matter. And so it's a good idea. So oh, by the way, if you hover over this, it'll remind you what the selector target. So if I hover over these two, I can say, well, these are all for the header element, the header area, sorry. And MicroTheme's default folders are kind of there to encourage you to organize the basic things. So if I drag this down here, I can do that with the site description and the title. And I like to order them kind of in terms from top to bottom, left to right.
Oh, I see. So you've just put that in header now.
I've just put that, and this is just my organization. It's also useful if I wanted to say disable an entire folder all at once. And see, now we've just gone straight back to the default styling. That's quite useful because then you can see, okay, well, is this something I've done in MicroThemer that's changed the design?
Oh, you just toggle it on and off.
So this,
when you use the word folder there, Seb, is this an actual folder somewhere in a
no,
file structure somewhere? That's just your lingo for storing it in nested.
It's got a little image of a folder. It just means group your selectors together some way.
Right. So that arbitrary thing that you were doing at the beginning, when you were creating selectors, which was more in the center of the screen, the bit that the folder that you were giving it was just a place for you to store it for easy retrieval at a later date, nothing more.
Yeah, it's just for your own organization, really.
Okay, and well, that's good.
And you could delete a whole folder as well in one go. So sometimes there are some conveniences that go with it.
Okay.
Yeah. So so that's in terms of the menu, and you can, by the way, you can add your own custom selectors to folders as well. If you know the code you want to add, you can put in a label. You don't have to use this targeting system, although this targeting system also allows you to just enter something freely, and if it doesn't target anything, you'll get this 0 here, and if it does, it'll tell you, oh yeah, there's 11 paragraphs on the page, kind of thing.
So the further down you go in the targeting suggestions, the more specific you become with your selector, or is it the other way around? Yeah.
Sorry, it's normally so it's specific in the sense that it'll target a single element, and then specificity is like a CSS concept, which I think is maybe a bit too deep to get into right now.
Yeah. Let's leave that.
Exactly.
So you've got 3 ways of targeting things visually. One more visual than the other. Okay, exactly. Right. Run us through this UI then. So you've got all devices labeled at the moment.
Yeah, so all devices means that your styles will affect any device, mobile, tablet, desktop, and it'll affect them all the same. And then these ones are for when you want to apply styles specifically for mobile. Or tablet or whatever, and they will only take effect up to a certain screen size, and that screen size is shown using this shading here. So the phone tab here means the shading tells me it'll only affect this area, screens up to this size, and it won't affect anything beyond this point.
Okay.
So you can be sure that the customizations you make won't break something on desktop.
Okay.
Yeah. So and this is maybe one thing I should point out is that here you've got. If you wanted to enter your own custom styles, maybe you like that you know a bit of CSS, you can enter your own custom styles here and use MicroThemer only for certain things. Like I always forget the syntax for text shadow and box shadow and
I do.
And flexbox actually and stuff like that. So I'm a big fan of entry, but I find it quite easy to enter things like margin and font size and stuff like that here.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I would use MicroThemer. And then, I'm not going to list all of these properties, but we've looked at transition. Animation is another one. I think it might take too long to show you an example.
No, but it's interesting to see. So you've got your fonts, you've got your text. What's the T for?
Text and font, they're very similar, aren't they? It's font is. It's just because there are so many. These all start, apart from line height, they all start with font weight, font style, text decoration with font, because underline and italic and bold are all just so tied together in terms of Microsoft Word experience. You've also got border. We haven't inserted any background images, but you can do that here. You can add gradients. I'm going to integrate gradient with background in an upcoming release. And we've looked at Flexbox, we've looked at the general layout stuff, and we've looked briefly at transition and elements like here. In terms of this menu here, most useful things are, well, setting preferences. As you see now, I've enabled edge mode. You can turn the MicroThemer will always add important by default to save newcomers from bumping up against specificity issues straight away. But they can turn this off once they become a bit more confident.
Yes.
There's also, you can also set your defaults. If you don't want to always work in pixels, you can set the defaults to rem, ems, whatever. And there's even actually a something which, I used that formula equals %, and it was kind of a bit complicated. You could set, like, if you always want to use rems, you could set pixel to rem for font size. And then when you enter a pixel value in the font size field, it will automatically convert it to a rem value. Because I find, I find that when you, I still think in pixels, even though I would use, it's considered best practice, by the way, to use rems over pixels for certain values like font size. But I still think in pixels, and so for me, it's quite convenient. Do you see that I chose 18, and then it just instantly converted it to a rem. And if I hover over this, it'll still tell me, yeah, that was 18 pixels, because the computed value is always shown in pixels, and you also get this little thing. So that's quite cool. I think it's a bit of a geeky feature. So the other main thing I think is that you can view the CSS MicroThemer generates, and you could copy this to your theme once you're done with MicroThemer, but I recommend there's actually a provision for a better way where you just copy this code to your theme's functions.php file. And what that does is it includes MicroThemer's style sheet, but it also does takes care of some things, like, because I've added some Google fonts like Playfair Display, and so to save you having to remember and manually include the URL to Google fonts, if you use this inactive, this code that you can copy and paste from preferences here, it'll do that all automatically. And also, if you've tapped into some body classes that allow you to target just one page and ensure that they don't affect other pages on the website, you'll want to make sure they still work. And so that code is also responsible for doing that. So it's kind of I think it's a more convenient system. You can still completely uninstall MicroThemer once you've added this code to your theme's functions.php file. And it'll just include the single style sheet and do anything else to make sure things work. And if you ever then want to re-edit things, you just go back, you can just reinstall MicroThemer. All these settings will still be here. You can make your updates and then uninstall it again if you like.
Perfect.
So that's actually a very popular feature, because people don't like to be too tied in with any one program.
I noticed there's the words enable Beaver Builder hidden in that menu.
Oh yeah. So there's the contact page. So at the moment, MicroThemer integrates with Beaver Builder in a way that so this is So this is where, so you notice this is coming up over the main menu. That's because when I was adding the negative margin, that's an example where a style has affected more pages than I wanted. And that's where, actually, I definitely want to mention this, because when it was this selector here, I think, what was it? The one that had all the margins. There we go. So if I go to this, in order to make it only affect the home page, what I can do is I can use this Retarget Selector icon. I'll retarget the area. I'll go back, I think it was here. And what I'll do is, instead of it just saying main, if I enable this CSS modify thing where you can add hover selectors and all sorts, if I enable page ID, what it does is it prefixes it with empty. Yeah, so you understand this. And now, so if I update the selector, now it will only affect the home page. And so if I go to the contact page, see, it's no longer going up here. So that's a really useful one to know.
Yeah, that is a useful one to know.
Going back to your question about Beaver Builder, you can enable Beaver. I could click this Beaver Builder link in the toolbar, or there's a little shortcut here where you can enable it. And let's see, is that loading? Yeah, there we go. So now we've got the Beaver Builder interface inside MicroThemer. And the integration with Beaver Builder is deep enough so that when I click Target in MicroThemer to style one of these things, the Beaver Builder admin things
Oh,
just
it just goes
disappear,
away.
just temporarily, yeah. And so I can target things, and then if I close it, it's back. So you can use the two together, and this is something that's been requested for Elemental, and it's something I'm going to be working on in the week after this webinar. Actually, it's going to be my main priority. Yeah. So at the moment with Elemental, the fields don't get out of the way when you, and so it's in order to, and people do use the two programs together, but they have to have one tab for Elemental and another tab for MicroThemer, and so it's not as ideal a workflow as it could be.
Right. Seb, we're going to have to stop you there.
Call it a day? Yeah, I've gone on pages.
No, there's an awful lot in there, isn't there? It's difficult to begin, I think, a subject like that because the UI is so unique and needs to be learned. But hopefully you guys have managed to get something out of that. There was a couple of questions just recently. Frank has asked, where are your settings changes being saved? So when you modify things, where's that actually getting stored?
Right, yeah. So if I go to the view CSS here, basically if I just open this in a new tab, it's all just here. This is so you've got in the WP content folder, there's a folder called MicroThemes and a single style sheet called activestyles.css.
Right.
And this is where it all goes. It doesn't do anything to, this is a common question I get, is it doesn't do anything to override it doesn't like delete any styles in the theme. It just it creates an alternative style sheet, and because of the way the selectors are made, it will overwrite. In terms of the browser, will use these style rules instead of the rules used in the theme. So it's quite simple in that sense. It all goes here.
Or anything like that. It's just in a flat CSS file stored in
your and it all goes here. And there we go.
That's good to know. And the other one, the only other question, oh no, David's just thrown one in, so I'll go through this one. This is a licensing issue. It says this is Michael Fidelis says, I have a I have a lifetime license for MicroThemer. However, when using Elementor page builder, the toolbar doesn't display on the page. Does MicroThemer have tutorials on the toolbar functionality?
The toolbar, does he, what toolbar does he mean? Does he mean...
Not sure, let's read that again. I have a lifetime license for MicroThemer. However, when using Elementor page builder, the toolbar doesn't display on the page. Does MicroThemer have tutorials on the toolbar functionality? And I'm guessing if you can't answer that immediately, we'll ask him to ask Michael to contact you at your email address.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, exactly. You can contact us via the contact form on themeover.com. But yeah, I'm happy to look into that separately.
Okay, great. And the next one is from David, who says, "Do you have high-level training on using MicroThemer?" I don't know if he means sort of text-based or perhaps video-based tutorials. Do you have any of that good stuff?
Yeah, I know. I'm going to be doing it depends what you mean to high level, but I'm about to, I've already written a plan for updating the docs where what I'm going to be doing is having like 3-4 minute videos where I explain really small aspects of the interface. Because like you say, there's a lot to it, and having like a long video like this it's hard to then scan and find the information you're looking for. So for instance, I'll have like a video which kind of explains font and text and background, and I'll just it'll be like a few minutes long, and I'll just explain, well, what's this property for, and are there any gotchas with it, and etc. So I think what he's after is on its way.
Okay. Again, David, I'm guessing that Seb, you've now heard his voice, he's a real human being. Contact him on, what was the email address again, Seb?
We can do support@themeover.com.
Perfect. Support@themeover.com. And just before we round it off, just to mention, if you scroll beneath the player here, you'll be able to see there's an offers tab, and you might like to take a look at that and see if that's of interest to you. So Seb, nice one. Yeah. Thank you very much. That was really fun. It was really, especially towards the end when you were doing the stuff at the bottom, it was pretty clear how quickly, once you've learned what you're doing and how all the pieces fit together. I mean, it's certainly a lot quicker than writing CSS. That's for sure.
Good. I'm glad. There's once you get it, you can do anything with it. So,
yeah, exactly. I think it's a question of trying it out, giving it a go. And
help people in the forum as well.
Yeah, that's great. All right, thanks guys for joining us. I appreciate you making the time on Thursday evening or whatever time it is where you are, and let us know what you thought. I'm thinking I might do more of these webinars, and I'm interested to hear back from you guys. However you want to contact me, admin@wpbuilds.com, to let me know what you think. Thank you very much, and I will close it unless something else happens dramatically in the next 4 seconds. Nice one, Seb.
Thank you very much. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.